and she's also a senior at, and she's a double major in sustainable technology and sustainable development.
Happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Anisha Sharma. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to our amazing panelists. We're really excited to lead this discussion.
And also following, one of the people invited today, one of our, I guess, friends, Professor Powell, is also here, and Anisha will introduce him.
Yeah, so I'm definitely honored to introduce Professor Powell from NCA&T. He's an associate professor in the Civil, Architectural, and Environmental Department in the College of Engineering. He's a registered architect and teaches the architectural related courses in the program. So he has designed and built buildings that incorporate energy efficiency, renewable energy technologies, and is in several areas, including market rate and affordable housing, as well as commercial and institutional buildings. He's been an advocate for sustainable development and has served as the chair of the NC Sustainable Energy Association and has been on the board of the Advanced Energy Corporation as a member of the recently formed North Carolina Hbcu Leadership Pathway Council. And he's here to share some information on an initiative that he's working on. So glad to have you, Dr. Powell.
Thank you, Anisha. And I'm so happy to be here. Enjoyed the earlier session this morning. Really appreciate everything you guys do out at APP in terms of helping all of us across the UNC system to learn more and do more related to energy and sustainability, in fact. I did want to take just a minute to share a project that I'm just getting started with right now. And as Anisha mentioned, there is a newly formed organization called the Carolinas Hbcu Energy Leadership Council. And so this is a group that's comprised of representatives of many different energy corporations of many different types from across North and South Carolina, and also the HBCUs, public and private, from North and South Carolina. And we're just in the beginning stages of planning our programs and activities. The primary purpose is to introduce students from HBCUs into the energy industry by having them meet representatives of these many different energy companies, and then also having the energy companies get introduced to students from the HBCUs, and hopefully we create a pipeline of opportunities for the students to become aware of and then hopefully join the energy industries. So I wanted to just really short, just kind of announce that in case there's anybody from any of the HBCUs, be you students, faculty, administration, or you have contacts with those folks, to let you know that this project is getting ready to get started. I'll put my email address in the chat and ask anybody who's got any suggestions or questions to just please give me a contact, and I'll look forward to getting back with you. So thank you so much. And now, at this point now, I really want to hear this panel, because this is right up the alley of what the stuff I need to learn related to this new council.
Absolutely. Thank you, Professor Powell. So kind of segueing into that, our panelist joining us today is Sierra Milosh. She's an assistant energy manager at Buncombe County Schools. And we also have Gabrielle Dunn. She's NOC operations analyst at Strata Solar. Then we have Nicole East. She's the director of brand management and strategy and business development at Mack Trucks. And then later in the session, we will have Aravind Kailas, and he is the Advanced Technology Policy Director for Volvo Group. We were also supposed to have Emily Willard from Tesla today, but due to the nature of her job, she will not be able to join us. Her schedule's just kind of crazy like that. But so just to introduce the format of this session, of this energy panel. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to see I guess, chat and then Q&A. If you have questions for the panelists, please enter that into the Q&A. That's just so that we can kind of keep things organized and things flowing well. Also, following this session at 4 p.m., there will be a meetup with renewable sustainable tech employers. And this is, I guess, powered through Handshake. And we will send out a link later for that. So just to start off, I would like to ask the panelists if they could just speak on their background and kind of what you guys do. Nicole, would you like to start us off?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Matthew, and thank you all for your participation this afternoon. Really excited to be here with you all, representing Mack trucks, and hopefully you're all familiar with Mack trucks. They're the cool trucks with the bulldog on them. I'm part of Volvo Group, so I'm here representing Volvo Group as well. And as Matthew had said, we'll hear from my colleague Aravind a little later. He had a schedule conflict for the first part of this webinar. But excited to be with you, and welcome to my home office here. This is the world that we're all living in, so I welcome you all into my home office. Wanted to kick off today just sharing with you a little bit of information about the corporation that I am really proud to be a part of, Volvo Group. Not sure how much you all know about the company, so I'll keep this brief, but I think it's important to set the scene for my role within the company. So Volvo Group drives prosperity through transport and infrastructure solutions. We offer trucks, buses, construction equipment, power solutions for marine and industrial applications, financing and services to increase uptime and productivity for our customers. We are not Volvo Car. That is actually a separate business. It did start all together, but a separate business, and that can sometimes be confusing for people. We are more on the industrial and the commercial side of things. We're committed to shaping the future landscape of sustainable transport and infrastructure solutions, and this is key to our strategy as a corporation. Our global headquarters is located in Gothenburg, Sweden. Our North American headquarters is located in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is where I am based. We have over 100,000 colleagues around the world. We manufacture products in 18 countries, and we sell products in over 190 markets around the world. So lots of great opportunity, lots of collaboration with global counterparts and colleagues around the world. Most of our business is in Europe and North America. So our solutions to global challenges are driven by a mission to drive prosperity through transport and infrastructure solutions. And we have a vision to be the most desired and successful transport and infrastructure solution provider in the world. And our ambition is really to lead by example. So we're aiming for our own transport solutions to be world-class in sustainability and resource efficiency, as well as improve productivity of our customers' logistics systems as well. And really the key to this is commercializing technologies that are disruptive new business models to help us reach this goal. So in that regard, we're focused on 3 key areas as a company: automation, electromobility, and connectivity. My personal experiences to date have been most closely aligned with electromobility focus. So that's what I'll focus on mostly today. Aravind, who will join later, as we said, has been really focused on all areas, so he'll be able to answer your questions in any of those 3 categories really well. My journey to become part of this extraordinary shift in technology and shift in the transportation industry is not typical. In university, I studied business with a major of communications in Brisbane, Australia. You may hear the accent there. And then shortly after completing my university degree, I relocated to the UK, where I worked on major events and a major global advertising festival for 3 years before I returned back to Australia and put these skills to use running marketing events for one of our major museum networks in Australia. I don't know if you all know, but in the transport and logistics sector, a lot of people in our company have family background in transport. It's something that tends to go generation to generation. And unlike many colleagues, that wasn't my story. I took a short-term contract with Mack Trucks 12 years ago. And as a marketing and brand person, I knew nothing about trucks, but I knew that Mack was kind of cool. And I didn't know why I thought it was cool. So as a marketing person, that was just interesting in itself to me. How could something that I knew nothing about be interesting and be cool? So I took that challenge, and 12 years later, I'm still at Mack Trucks. I'm obviously in a new country now, and continue to learn new things all the time. So my current responsibilities as Director of Global Brand Management include product launches, as well as retail branding, as well as intellectual property management and trademark management. And that is how I came to be part of the electromobility story for Mack. So it's something that I sort of fell into. Again, my background isn't this. I don't have an engineering background, but I'm so incredibly thankful that I did. This is completely unlike anything I've done before when it comes to commercializing electric vehicles. Everything is different, and colleagues from right across our organization are collaborating to ensure that our customers are successful with this. Like I said, it may seem obvious that we have engineers that work on electromobility projects, but my message to you all today is that if you find this interesting, if you have an interest in energy and sustainability, there are opportunities in pretty much all areas. We have people in finance, people in marketing, people that are specializing in charging and infrastructure, dealer support, IT tools and services, training, parts distribution, safety, and public affairs, which is where Aravind comes into the picture for us. So I suppose my message to you all, just as an introduction, based on my own personal experiences, that it's really good to have a career plan and a career path in mind, but just to leave yourselves open to opportunities that may deviate from that plan, because you just never know where they'll take you or what you may learn along the way. So thank you all, and I look forward to this discussion.
Awesome, thank you. Gabrielle, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Hey everyone. Thank you, Matthew and Anisha and Dee, for putting this all together. I really wish as a student something like this would have been done for me, because I think this is a really good idea and is very helpful in the grand scheme of things. I work for Strata Solar Services. So Strata, if you're not familiar with it, it's a very big solar company in the Southeast part of the US. So we have two main branches. So there's the EPC, so engineering, procurement, and construction, and then O&M. So I'm on the O&M side, which is operation and maintenance. And so for my role, I'm an operations analyst. So basically, my role is at the heart of operations, whether that's when we're onboarding sites, everyone calls in to us and we help run tests to make sure that everything's communicating correctly. There's also the day-to-day aspect of the role, which involves maintenance. So right now we oversee a few hundred sites, and that goes through an alarming system. And based on those alarms, really depends on how we respond to it. So for my role, it's interpreting those alarms into response. And depending on the site, depends how we respond to it. So for my role, it is a 24/7 every day of the year role, because we do oversee NERC plants, which is part of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, which basically means we're interconnected with the national grid. So with that, I do have to have a security clearance. So extensive background checks with that, because a disruption in one of those sites could cause instability in the national grid, and that's how you get rolling blackouts. So there is some importance to that role. For me, I do have an extensive background in information technology. I started as a student at App State in the Walk-In Center. When I first started, I didn't know anything about it. And between working there and then going through the appropriate technology program, which I have a bachelor's in, it led me to this in a very roundabout way. So kind of what Nicole was saying earlier about not closing yourself off from certain opportunities because it's not exactly what you want to do. that's kind of how I got here. So I took the IT path, and from the student or my student position, I ended up working for UNC Chapel Hill IT for quite a long time. So I grew there, and then this role I have now, it does have a pretty extensive IT aspect to it in terms of security, remotely connecting to sites, remotely controlling sites through different SCADA systems for testing and monitoring. Yeah, excited to be here. I look forward to all your questions. Then I'll turn it back over to Matthew and Anisha.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Sierra, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Sorry in advance for any background noise. There is some sort of alarm testing going on in the building right now, naturally. So, but I'm super happy to be here. I am so grateful for the passion of just phenomenal people my age and younger who have a passion to make a difference in the world and are doing that while they're still in school. So kudos to y'all for setting this up. And yeah, it's just so inspiring to look around and see people who are doing their best to have their part in saving the world. So my name's Sierra. I'm the assistant energy manager at Buncombe County Schools down in Asheville. It's a fairly recent position. I started in July of this year, and I work with one other super inspiring, amazing female who, you know, we have this fantastic opportunity where our maintenance director sees the value in energy efficiency and sees the value in these projects that we're working with, implementing, sort of coming up with as we go every day on the job. And so we have phenomenal support, both financially and on a, you know, a level where the value of our work is seen every day. And so there's not this constant fighting of trying to get projects done and approved, but really this openness where if we have an idea for a project or we have an idea for something that we want to learn or something that we'd like to see done, we have the capability to work on that and to do the background research and see if it's a project that makes sense for us and for our school system. We have 45 schools and 48 buildings that we oversee with our 2-woman team, which is incredibly exciting and challenging. And, you know, I come to work every day and have one plan for the day, and then it completely goes in the opposite direction. And I find myself in a boiler room, like under a leaking pipe, you know, just wondering what's going on. So there's definitely this excitement of coming into work every day, which so I was a student at Appalachian, both for undergrad in mathematics and then grad school in sustainable technology. And, you know, I had this grand vision for my life and for the job that I wanted. And I was like, okay, I'm going to finish grad school and then I'm going to get exactly the job I want in exactly the place that I want. And life just doesn't end up happening that way. And so I worked a couple this and that jobs in between graduating and finding this job. And, you know, I had things in my life that were exciting on a personal level, but I never woke up excited to go to work. So the fact that I can wake up now and be excited for my day and feel like I'm contributing and making a difference and actually physically able to see in the energy data that my work is making a difference has been life-changing, honestly. So what else is there? I guess, so a little bit of my background. I studied mathematics in undergrad because I love math. I've always loved math. I geek out. I think it's so fun, so interesting. I love understanding how things work. And the purity of math was always something that I just had so much fun with. But sort of towards the end of my undergrad, I started looking at, jobs that you can get with a math degree. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to do any of that. And so I had this kind of, you know, little mini crisis where I was like, I know I love math and I know I love this more like, you know, uh, engineering side of things. But I also knew that I loved sustainability. I had always felt this passion for making a difference and doing what I can to, I guess, save the humans. And so I ended up getting a concentration in sustainability with my mathematics degree, which my advisor was phenomenal in helping me figure out how to make that work for me. So if you have a passion in something, even if you have a business degree or a communications degree or an art degree, like there is going to be a way to merge what you're good at and what you're passionate about. So always just think creatively, speak to the people around you, ask questions, even if you think they're dumb, they're not. Someone will have a fantastic answer. And always follow the breadcrumb trail. I wound up in Jim Deese's office over in the Office of Sustainability, I think the last year of undergrad, and was looking for a data set. And he ended up, I think at the end of that meeting, offering me a job, and I just went with it. And, it brought me to where I am today, because I never would have seen myself going to grad school for renewable energy, but it just clicked for me. It just made sense because I had, this brain that works a certain way, and I knew I wanted to do certain things with my energy in life, and they ended up coming together in a really neat way that fit me. And so I'd say take advantage of the people around you who have lived a little bit longer, who have had more experiences, and because they're going to have valuable things to say. They're looking out for you. They're going to have ideas that maybe you haven't thought of. And so just always be open to the curveballs that life is throwing at you, and see how you can make it work for what you're good at, for what you care about, and for what you want to spend your time doing. So excited to hear some questions and hopefully have some decent answers. And yeah, thanks for being here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I just want to say, as someone who's also, a student, I actually had the chance to kind of see Gabby and Sierra in action. And I remember that was the really important part of my journey too as a student, is just seeing other people and the difference they're making while they're in school. And that's helped informed me and like kind of doing what I'm doing, being involved in the organizations I'm in. So along with that, I wanted to ask you both specifically, in what ways, what challenges, I'd say, would you experience when you transitioned from college to a professional workplace? What were you expecting? Of course, we're dealing with this elephant in the room, which is the global pandemic that we're experiencing. But in what ways and what advice would you give to students on setting expectations for entering the workplace? And either of y'all can take this.
I was actually just having this conversation yesterday, so I'm happy to dive in. I think there's this expectation that, because you know that you're doing a good job and you've done a good job in school and you're a good student and you know how to learn, that life will just hand you the perfect job and the perfect location at the perfect salary and all the situations. And sometimes, the best advice I could give is figure out what you're comfortable compromising with, and figure out what your firm desires are. For example, I after college, it took me 1.5 years before I found a job that lined up with my with what I studied and what I cared about. Because it was important to me to live another year in Boone and live in an off-grid cabin and kind of do that while I could. And that was important to me. And I was willing to say, okay, I don't have the job that I necessarily would have written for myself, but because I love where I live, and because I love what I'm doing in my personal life, I was willing to compromise on the career for just a moment. So your compromise, you might say, well, I'd rather live in North Carolina, but what's the most important to me is having a job in photovoltaics. And if that's your compromise, go with that and listen to your gut, and be flexible in areas where you can be flexible, because every step that you take is leading you to the next step. Everything you do is, in my opinion, for a reason, and setting you up for success in ways that you wouldn't have necessarily written for yourself. And so my advice would be, figure out what you are comfortable compromising, and figure out what is the most important to you and what you're not so flexible on, and just really listen to your gut, and apply for every job ever, go through every interview that you possibly can, and mess up the ones that you don't care about so much to get practice, because interviews are hard.
So with what Sierra said, having expectations when it comes to getting your first job, it was something that hit me pretty hard once I started the interview process. I applied for everything. And there was one interview, and I still remember it, but basically I didn't realize until the interview that it was a 2-person company. And they were looking for someone very experienced. And I didn't really know anything that they were asking. Looking at the requirements, I was like, oh, maybe I could fit, I could get trained into this, which some companies are able to do. So it is good to put yourself out there. But when it comes to the expectation part, for me, I ended up staying in Boone. I worked over the summer at New River Light and Power. And then after that, I worked for my uncle a little bit, and then I was an au pair in France. And then I came back, got into IT, wasn't really expecting to do that. And I stayed there for a few years. And then eventually I knew that working in the renewable energy industry, it was one of those things that I didn't want to compromise on. And I felt like I had put it off for too long. And so that's inevitably how I ended up in this position. I found a great love in IT. I love all aspects about it, but at the end of the day, I needed something where you're contributing to the bigger picture. And so even though I was enjoying what I was doing, I was missing that piece. So really, when it comes to applying to jobs, as a student, when you're doing school, that's kind of like a sprint. And one thing it took me a while to learn is that your career is a marathon. So you probably won't get the job you're wanting right out of college, but that doesn't mean you stop working for it, because inevitably, CEOs of companies, they had to work their way there, and there's other positions, not everyone's a CEO or high up in a company, but they still had to put in the work to get where they are. So that's a really big thing. So, it's not easy, but at the same time, you don't want to be a limiting factor to yourself. So know what you're passionate about. And even if the first, 3 jobs are not what you're exactly wanting to do, if you keep working towards it, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, so it's just always kind of keeping that in mind.
Oh, thank you for those very honest responses. And I think that there is a lot of, I don't know, maybe pressure would be the right word for students right out of college to get your dream job. It's everything we've been working for these past few years in college. I was going to say, Nicole, I saw you nodding when Gabby made the reference to it being a marathon. As someone who is more seasoned in her career, could you maybe...
Is that a nice way of saying older?
No, someone who has
amazing
experience and is very...
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask what your thoughts are. I know you come from an international background, how the job market might have been different than what we're seeing here. I'm sure it's all been hit with COVID, but maybe if you could provide some sort of reflection or advice you would give your younger self.
Sure, absolutely. Oh, there's so much advice I would give my younger self. Maybe I could focus on some advice I'd give to the participants in this webinar. I completely agree with what Sierra and Gabby were saying. I think for me, one of the key focuses as a new grad is to take the time on your applications. It's really important. It's a really competitive landscape to get the jobs, and don't rush through applications. Look through the language that the company's using. Do your research on, be it a corporation or an institution that you're going to go and work for or apply to, and just take time in that process. And when you do get your first job as a new grad, recognize that you bring a lot to the table as someone new and with fresh eyes and good ideas, but don't stop learning. You know, you still have a lot to learn, and a lot that you can gain from the more seasoned, let's say, people in the place where you're working. And it may seem frustrating as a new grad. You know, you'll be working with people like me who are 20 years older than you. You'll be working with people that are 40 years older than you, and they will do things differently. And that's sometimes going to be a frustration, sometimes things that you can learn from. I think it's the first time ever we've had 5 generations of people in the workforce at once. And that brings a lot of opportunity and some frustrations and challenges as well. So I definitely recommend, one of what I would suggest to my younger self is find mentors early. And not necessarily mentors as in your direct supervisor, because I'm going to assume you've got the skills and you can learn that on the job, you know, the extra things. But think about the areas where you maybe still need to grow, and ask people for support and help. Because I think, Sierra, you were mentioning, you know, the people that have been around for a while want to help you, want to support you. People want to see you succeed. So identify as soon as you can those areas where you say, I really want to learn more about this, and find people to help you and support you through that. Mentors are invaluable, mentors and champions.
Yeah, absolutely. You can never get enough mentors. That's one thing that I've definitely experienced. And even adding on to kind of what Gabrielle said, that really hit home with me as well. Just being a senior myself and applying to jobs and everything, like the whole, I guess, like marathon thing really is like true, because I've talked to recruiters and stuff. And like even one recruiter I talked to yesterday, he was like, yeah, like before I moved to my position now, which is higher up in a solar company, he was a solar installer for about 5 years. And I was like, wow, like, I mean, I was expecting to maybe like get something a little more, but at the end of the day, you know, you start where you can.
And don't be discouraged. You know,
Exactly.
we all have setbacks, and you might read a job description and you're applying and you think, I'm the perfect fit for this. And when you don't get it, it's really disappointing, and be disappointed in that, you know, be disappointed in that moment, and then pick yourself up and move on, because we've all been through that. We've all been turned down from jobs that we think we're perfect for. You know, but things work out. Just trust the process, and things work out, and stay optimistic, stay positive, and just keep plugging away at it. Apply for jobs. Like the lady said, apply for as many jobs as you think fit your needs and the things that you're not prepared to compromise on, and interview away.
Yeah, and that's one piece of advice I've been given, is you can never interview enough, because any interview is good practice for the next.
And it's all a learning.
So kind of moving on, we've had a lot of big events, I guess, in the past year or so, one being COVID. The more, I guess, recent event is change in administration. So I guess between these two, how would like y'all describe this as like, how's this like affected your, I guess, line of work, and kind of where do you see like your energy sector and like your company moving towards with like these 2 recent changes? And this is open to any of y'all.
I can maybe kick off if you ladies want me to.
Sorry, that's kind of a big question.
So I'd say, you know, from a transport and logistics perspective, and if I just take it from a North American perspective, if we're going to focus on the change in administration as well, COVID we had a lot of steam behind the transition to alternative fuels and electromobility. You know, if I look back at 2019, a lot of interest from customers. We launched our electric products last year. You know, things were moving well. And COVID, sorry, let me go back. On the Mack truck side of things, our electric vehicles are refuse vehicles, collecting the trash in neighborhoods around the cities, urban and suburban areas. And so a lot of our customers are municipalities. And with COVID, whilst there is still so much interest and desire to move towards this, there is a financial aspect as well. And budgets were put on hold. I mean, we all know people were losing their jobs. Local government agencies just didn't have the money to invest last year, or were not prepared to maybe make that commitment. What we see heading into 2021 is things are already shifting quite quickly. So those conversations kept happening through COVID, but in terms of, are you prepared to, you know, sign and invest in electric vehicles and the infrastructure and the charging and everything that involves? You know, we're all in a bit of a holding pattern to see what happened. What's COVID going to do? How long is it going to last? What does this mean? That's transitioned really quickly already in 2021. And incentives and grants are a huge part of building the business case around electrification of transportation. We see some optimism here with the new administration, nothing concrete yet. And Aravind will be someone that can talk a lot more to that. He's the government relations, public affairs person or part of that team in our company. But there is anticipation that we will see some grants and incentives at a federal level that haven't been in the US previously. So there's a lot of optimism around this space.
So from my perspective, I started this job in the midst of COVID. So from what I understand, the COVID implications for Strata, it had more to do with personnel rather than business. So in terms of like for safety, limiting how many people are in the space, but a lot of the work can be done remotely. And so there was that shift to keep everyone socially distanced, coming in on different days, working from home when you can, obvious requirement for like PPE in the office, which they've been wonderful about. So like at the door, we have boxes of masks. And so if you happen to forget, they're right there. For my particular role, we have to be on site just because it is for a security issue. For some of the sites that we monitor, it requires being in a secure environment. So they limited the number of people that were allowed in. So the biggest impact for that specifically to me would be when it comes to onboarding sites. Some people, it makes it a bit more difficult because the people that are involved in these tests typically like would be in the office with us. So there is just a little more added stress in that. It's completely manageable because there has to be an overall call to coordinate everything anyways. In terms of the business side of things, the nice thing with solar is that it produces energy, it's electric, and so sadly, most people always need electricity. So there's a consistent need there. And so a decent bit of this in terms of what we do, the energy produced gets bought. So in terms of site creation, because it's on a commercial level and it's bigger, it hasn't been impacted too much. I could see it impacting residential, maybe a bit more just based on the client side of things, because that's an individual decision rather than interconnecting with a national grid and working with your utilities. Because there is the overall push right now towards solar and a greener energy. So utilities and power companies are going to continue pushing that way. Whereas residentials, if people have been hit by COVID, it becomes a priority thing. And so, putting off, installs or trying to find a different way to incorporate the cost in a different sense. So maybe different financing plans. I'm not too familiar with that side of things, but I could see the residential area being impacted a little bit more. And that would really leave it up to those companies to decide how to make it financially feasible for their customers. So for me, I haven't personally experienced much of it, thankfully, very fortunate. And then in terms of the company, I haven't really seen it on that front either.
So I also started this job in the midst of COVID, which, just to hit again on the power of advisors and the valuableness of advisors. This job was found by Patrick Richardson. I didn't even find this job. He just sent it to me in a link, and I applied, and then boom, it was perfect. So on a personal level, it's just inspiring to me that there was still a push for energy efficiency. Even during a pandemic, this job was posted, put out, and hired all within a short period in the middle of a pandemic, which I think just goes to show that passion and drive can get anything done, no matter the circumstances. That being said, because I started in the middle of COVID, there was this crazy couple months that I came in the middle of where we were pushing to get PPE out to schools. We were pushing to get schools set up to have kids back in. So there was just massive amounts of PPE, of setting up all these physical distancing markers everywhere. And it was this awesome effort between all of our departments in maintenance, where the painters and the electricians and the plumbers and the energy management team were all coming together to set these schools up to get ready to have kids. And so it was inspiring to see so many different people coming together to work on something that needed to be done. So that was a really beautiful start to this job, where I got to meet people from all across the board and work with people that I might never work with again. And it was just a great opportunity to get to know people right when I first started the job. COVID has been fantastic for energy management side of things, because there are no students in the buildings, and we can go in and get all the projects done that we want to get done. And we have all the space and all the time to go into these schools, and we're working on a big occupancy sensor project and exterior lighting project, changing outdoor lights to LEDs. So there's this freedom of mobility in the buildings that we wouldn't normally see, where we can knock on doors in a classroom and barge in and come peek in the office to see what we need to put in occupancy sensors. And so it's been fantastic on a mobility and freedom to get projects done. That being said, I think we're all really ready to see kids come back to school. So I'm super excited that they're starting again on Monday, and we're setting them up the best we can, and we'll go from there. And also, sort of a non-answer to the change in administration question, recently Buncombe County put out this big push for a 10 megawatt solar project across Buncombe County schools, Buncombe County, City of Asheville, Asheville City Schools, and AB Tech, where all these municipalities came together to say which sites they'd like to put solar on, and we all bid it together. And there was this big push from the community to approve this project. So it's inspiring in that, even before any change on a national level, the community level, there was this big push to come up with a plan for net zero and to have solar put onto all of our community buildings. So sort of a non-answer, but I'm inspired and hopeful by what I see around me during a pandemic, during crazy times, during change, and just the beauty of seeing people coming together to do what's best for the community.
And just kind of like following up on that. So I actually come from a family of teachers. So, I mean, I've seen COVID kind of affect them all in different ways as far as like online learning, switching back and forth. And kind of like with that push, like has that kind of kept you like on your toes, I guess, in a sense, like from like day-to-day operations, like are you just kind of going with the flow?
Well, it's definitely been a mess. And I'm so thankful I'm not a parent or a teacher or a student during this time. But, you know, again, just trying, you know, in times like this, I have to like intentionally reach for more positive expressions because I have the tendency to reach for more negative ones. And so I'm trying to reach for, you know, the inspiration that I see around me and the goodness that I see around me, and you know, the adaptability of the different schools, principals, custodians, teachers, parents, students, like everyone is adaptable, everyone is adapting, and everyone, you know, is trying to do what's best for everyone. So that's the positive expression I'm reaching for.
Absolutely. So kind of moving forward, we have a question from the audience, and this is directed to Nicole. In regards to electric mobility, is Mack looking toward battery electric vehicles infrastructure, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and infrastructure, or some combination of both?
The answer to that is some combination of both. So what we have out in the market right now is battery electric vehicles. And I will say being a brand that is part of a huge global corporation is a real benefit when it comes to introducing these new technologies. It's such an interesting time to be part of this industry. I don't think that there has been a more positively disruptive time in speaking with my colleagues that have been in this industry for, you know, potentially 30, 40 years or longer than I have. This is unique where we're at right now. We have never seen more new competitors. If you think about, you all may have heard of companies like Nicole and Tesla getting into the heavy vehicle industry, that and BYD, Lion, you know, companies that are focused solely on electric vehicles or energy efficient vehicles, let's say. So we are traditionally a diesel company, of course, moving into this space. So there's a lot of different things happening, a lot of different dynamics. So what we're focused on now, bringing to the market, is battery electric vehicles, the infrastructure, the charging that goes with that. Our finance team is looking at energy as a service, you know, so selling the complete package, including the energy and electricity to charge these vehicles, to make it easier for people to transition from diesel to electric. That's our aim. We do have a Volvo Group 2030 goal around electromobility and sustainability that is really ambitious. So we're working in all areas of our business, like I said before. And then when it comes to the hydrogen fuel cells, I think we're definitely working towards that. The R&D in this space is extensive, as you can imagine. It's new, and it's new not just from the vehicle perspective, but from the charging perspective, working with utilities and infrastructure. How does this all happen? This is not like a Tesla car where you can plug it in at your home. These are huge batteries with a lot of capacity that require very specific infrastructure. And yeah, with hydrogen fuel cells, I think one of the most interesting things for me is, from a global corporation perspective, is that we're seeing corporations that maybe traditionally have been competing joining forces to invest in R&D to make sure that, you know, we do our part to move the world forward in a better way. So we are working on a project, you may have heard of a company, Daimler, In North America, they have the brands Freightliner and Western Star. They're also Mercedes-Benz around the world. So it's actually Volvo Group and Daimler working together to make sure that we can bring this technology to the world as quickly as possible. So I think that's super interesting, and it's great to be part of that. Sorry, that's a very long answer to yes, combination of both.
Oh yeah, it's so interesting to learn about it. So we have another question for you as well. So what would be some of the limitations revolving around charging infrastructure? And do you see that becoming less of a concern with range anxiety for industrial electric vehicles, and what your thoughts would be?
Oh, that's a great question. Range anxiety is probably the key challenge that we're facing with customers right now. And you can imagine even with early adopters of technology, when something is completely new, and there are so many stakeholders in making sure that this works well for them, they need to make sure that the vehicles serve their needs. So we have developed technologies, and I didn't mention before in my introduction, but IT is obviously a big part of this, the tools that support the customers to ensure that the vehicles and the infrastructure meets their needs, like range calculators, where they can upload data about where they're stopping, where they're starting, and make sure that that's going to happen, are critical. So our IT teams have been huge in supporting successful commercialization of this technology. But I do anticipate, as we get more data from these vehicles, range anxiety will ease. And I think that's true with any technology that comes to market. You've got the early adopters that want to be on board. We work with them, the customers that, acknowledge that this is completely new. But never before have we had us as the OEM or the vehicle provider, a charging partner. So we don't manufacture chargers. We work with different companies that manufacture the chargers. And then, like I said, the biggest constraint from my perspective right now as we're getting into this and learning together with the charging providers is working with the utilities to upgrade infrastructure, and the time that it takes to do that and the investment that it takes to do that. We can deliver the truck, they can buy a charger, but infrastructure upgrades are difficult. And Gabby, you probably know a little bit about that based on your work. It's expensive and it's time consuming for the utility companies. But we're working through that.
Wow, yeah. Another question, is induction charging going to be something that you think will take off for public charging options for private vehicles?
For private vehicles, I'm probably not qualified to respond to that, but I will anyway. I think so. And I'm not an engineer, and please don't take this as gospel, or this is my own personal view, not a view of Volvo Group, let me be clear. But I expect so, yes. There's still so much changing, and that's why it's such an exciting space to be in right now. Like I said, we're learning, we're working with different stakeholders. We're working with refuse vehicles, like I said. So the body builders is another thing. So if you think of a refuse truck, you've got the truck and then you've got the compaction thing. That can be either traditional hydraulic or it can be electric as well. And then we've got to work out how much electricity do both of these pieces take. So there's a lot of things that we're all learning and that's fun.
So as we're kind of moving forward, we have another question from the audience. As a geography major focusing in geographic and environmental systems, what opportunities are there available for careers in energy that relate to my field, specifically careers focusing on a qualitative or environmental approach rather than a quantitative focused careers like technology?
I have an answer. I have a non-answer. They're my favorite type of answer. So my boss, the assistant or the energy manager for Buncombe County Schools, has a degree in geography, and I'm something like urban planning. So just reiterating again, look for jobs, look for opportunities that use your skills even in a way you wouldn't have expected. Like, so I came from a math background, but was interested in sustainability. So I ended up looking at energy analysis. I kind of merged the two. So kind of the world is your oyster. There's no limit. There's not going to be jobs that say must have a geography degree. There are going to be jobs that say, preferred desired qualifications: geography degree, math degree, sustainable technology degree, business degree, or art degree. It's like there's no, just because you majored in geography doesn't mean that you are limited in your job opportunities. It's up to you to find the job that makes your heart beat faster, and go with that, and go with your gut. That's a non-answer. I don't actually have a technical answer of like jobs to look for. I'm sorry.
I would suggest one area could be resource management. So we obviously do not manufacture the batteries ourselves, and there's many, in terms of the value chain, many different stakeholders involved, but making sure that we're working with suppliers who source materials with the least impact to the environment is really critical to us as a company. And our purchasing teams are working with that all the time. So you could go into potentially purchasing, which sounds like a deviation from what it is that you're studying. Or working with one of these companies that ensures minimal environmental impact in sourcing the materials necessary to deliver these sustainable solutions. Maybe one option.
So the first thing that came to mind in the beginning of the question, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure GIS is part of geography, but I think that would fall more on the technology side, because I've seen GIS used when I worked for New River Light and Power. That's a big thing with utilities everywhere. I do believe it has a role in solar as well, but then again, that is the technology side of things. In terms of the environmental approach, so on the solar end, there is a big environmental side to that too. So before a solar project is ever like approved, there's a whole process trying to find the right location for it. And there are a number of things that can like deem a site or like a potential site unusable for things. So for geography wise, like part of that is going out and testing the soil or going around to just the environment around, because if there's like an endangered species there, like you're not able to build on it. That might not be like specifically related to geography, but if you knew enough about the land itself and what like makes a good site for the commercial aspect of things, that is one area you could look. So kind of being on the front end of projects, like specifically to the solar industry. I imagine there'd be similar-ish type things with different energy fields. So like wind turbines, they have to go do a site surveying visit beforehand. And there is a big process behind it. So I don't know how extensive or like in terms of how many positions they would have for something like that, but I do know it's a thing, because without having that, really, that's, you don't have a project if you don't have the okay to build there, because you don't want your site sinking. That would not be fun. And you want to make sure it's, solid foundation. If that, yeah.
And I would say as well, I expect, over the next 10 to 20 years, a lot of the opportunities in this space don't even exist right now. This is changing fast. As a large global corporation, we're looking at what skill sets do we need to be successful in this? How do we change our business model? I mean, it's changing everything. And so, just be open to things that will come. This is a hugely changing landscape, and there's just going to be more and more opportunities right across the sphere of sustainability as we move forward.
I'm just going to hop in for a second and say, welcome, Aravind. I'll let you maybe introduce yourself, and then if you want to hop in on this question we're just talking about, opportunities for students in the interested in more in the environmental side of energy. And maybe you could talk a little bit from like a policy perspective and talk about maybe what incentives there would be, if there's more funding in certain jobs, or more maybe what this current administration is planning. Maybe you could provide some perspectives, but welcome.
Thank you. And sorry for being late, but thank you for accommodating. Thank you for holding my spot at the table. So I am thrilled to be part of this discussion. And thanks to the organizers for having the Volvo group, 2 of us on this call. So let's see. So this is actually a great time to be in this industry. Transportation is taking off. It is somewhat the perfect storm when you look at clean technology. And there's many reasons for that. And maybe that has been discussed and probably you guys are aware of that, but there's the corporate push. Like companies like the Volvo group, we made an announcement saying that we're gonna be 0 carbon footprint by 2050. That's a huge statement, right? Yes, we have a target year, but then we're gonna take the steps to make sure that we produce those products that meet those targets. There's the policy push. We have a new administration in the White House, but then several states are making moves in terms of trying to meet their own climate goals. And within the states, you can see sort of the local governments, the utilities, sort of using their operating budget, if you will, for lack of a better word, trying to put some of these things on the road. This is not going to happen instantaneously. This is not a switch that you flip on, but you see a natural progression. Technology, I think we're really starting to see technology that is actually at a reasonable price point, not just in terms of capability, reliability, but also scalability. So it's all coming together. So the next decade is going to be extremely critical in terms of having these vehicles across the different categories, and the necessary infrastructure. Workforce development is a huge component, because you can put trucks, you can put chargers, but if you ain't got people who can work on these trucks or who know how to work on these chargers when they go bad or service these electric trucks, it's not going to really be sustainable. So that's where workforce development becomes extremely critical. So I would say, I'll conclude with this and pause, and we can continue the discussion, but I would probably say that there's so many verticals within this space of sustainability or clean technology or zero emission technology, whichever way you want to slice it. There's a role for very technical people, because R&D, technology development, technology related activities are always going to continue to better the technology. And now you can think of technologies that go on the vehicle, technologies go on the charging infrastructure. And then there's the other side where, being part of that ecosystem, you work on these trucks, you work on these chargers. So there's a few different possibilities here. And of course, there's the government side of the world, where you can be part of public agencies, you can be part of utilities, you can sort of be spearheading their transportation electrification program, tweaking these program parameters and such. So obviously, some of you are thinking about playing a role from a policy perspective, or being in the public sector and driving things. There's a role for this also over the next 10 years.
Thank you. I'll also give you a chance to maybe give some background on your career and where you started, and your background on how it's brought you to where you are today, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. So I've been with the Volvo Group for about 6 years, and I operate out of California, Southern California. Contrary to what my colleagues usually think, that I'm out at the beach, I'm actually in my home office. So I do work for a living. Jokes apart, my role for the Volvo Group is to oversee the advanced technology policy development. So in my role, I support a variety of different business areas. My background is very technical, though. I do come from an engineering background, pure sciences, applied mathematics. So I did spend a lot of time in school. I was fortunate to attend very good schools. I didn't go to App State, so don't hold that against me. But I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Georgia Tech. So I spent a few years. I earned my undergrad, graduate, and PhD degrees in electrical and computer engineering, and also applied mathematics. My background is primarily telecommunications. And then gradually, you kind of see telecommunications, your phones or applications on your phones percolate into other spheres of life. So I transitioned into somewhat of the intersection between artificial intelligence, telecommunications, and healthcare. And then somehow I found my way into transportation. So I'll conclude by saying that my journey across these different domains, technology domains, has taught me that it's vital to understand what problem it is that you're solving. You want to really put effort into crafting the right problem, asking the right questions, and then you can really discover, design new solutions. And here's the kicker that I've learned that has worked for me. Sometimes you will see commonalities between the different problems. So you can actually apply some solutions that you have identified throughout your different roles in your career and apply them to some of the problems that you're facing. So hopefully that kind of gives a feel for my professional journey and what I do here for the Volvo Group.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I do have a more general question, and we're going to loop Gabby and Sierra back into this one. So what advice would you all give to students that they can actually do now while still in college to help them move into a career in energy? And we actually, you missed this, Aravind, but we had a student who came from a geography background, and it wasn't a very technical background. So this can be open to students from all backgrounds, anyone interested in an energy job. What are some experiences that you think would be valuable? And anyone can take this.
Well, maybe I'll kick it off and others please chime in, but I would say start by following the news. And I'm not saying watch CNN or Fox or whatever channel, but follow credible sources of news to focus on the topic. Try to look at the topic from many different perspectives. You can look at sort of what are the cars that are out there. You can kind of look at what are the heavy duty trucks that are out there. In your state, in your community, you can start to maybe try to better understand what your local authorities are doing, what your state is doing. And that's kind of where the journey starts. Talk to your peers, and then you can start seeing that there's many different facets to this clean energy domain. So, speaking to that person with the geography background, that's extremely important, because when you're thinking about building out public charging infrastructure, for example, yes, you need the technical guys, you need the electrical, the software gurus and everybody to get the thing in place, but how do you pick the locations? How do you know that the soil underneath is actually good enough to hold a charger? You put a charger and it's a sinkhole. I mean, that's not going to serve anybody. So you have these roles within city authorities, city agencies, local planning and permitting agencies that help identify what are ideal spots for having some of these deployments. So I just urge people to just kind of walk through the steps that you might take, and that's where you're probably going to stumble upon some of these. Maybe there's a role for somebody with a geology background, or somebody who is an expert project manager, or somebody with maybe even an arts major has a role to play in this, believe it or not. So I'll pause there because I don't want to take a big bite of the apple. So I'll let my other panelists dive in.
Yeah, I would love to hear from Gabby or Sierra, because just as I've seen you in action, you all are like the blueprints for like how to be involved while you're in college and how that helped you. And I know, Sierra, you touched a little bit about how your mentors helped you find jobs and things like that. But what do you think were some of your most valuable experiences in college, and like how they informed you and why it's important to get involved? Maybe you could touch on that.
So as a student, I kind of try to do everything. So I was, I don't even know. So involved in REI, I attended some solar club meetings. They always had cool stuff going on. I mean, talking to professors, really, like, I guess it wasn't until later on as a student where I really started, like, before I got the internship with New River Light and Power, like, I don't know, there's almost like an unspoken, depending on the person, it is a little intimidating where, like, in your mind, you almost have the thought of like, oh, like, I'm just a student. And somehow it in a way, in some regards, it was like kind of hard to come out of that shell. And it wasn't until later on where I was like, oh, like all of these people, I mean, I think Sierra had spoke some to this earlier, but like everyone wants you to succeed, or maybe like I think Nicole said it as well. So everyone really is there for you. I had reached out, or I talked to a few professors before following up with the potential internship. And there were professors like I didn't necessarily talk to all that often, but all of them near the beginning of the conversation was like, oh, like, do you want me to write you a letter of recommendation? Like, how can I help you? I can do this, this, this. And it caught me completely off guard because I didn't necessarily, you know, approach them for it. It wasn't that I thought, you know, they wouldn't give it to me if I asked, but just the willingness of the people around you. It's kind of like, I don't know, like I know Dr. Farrell sends out emails to the department about job postings. I mean, even like when I was still a student, I would know about internships and I'd pass it along to professors to like give to other students that needed internships. So it's really like knowing your support system, but also like being able and like willing for it to expand. So I think the last year or so I was networking a lot, and really like getting to know people. I know it's different now. And so kind of in regards to COVID, like putting that spin on things, really like if you don't have a LinkedIn, you should really get a LinkedIn and start adding people. And they do have chat on LinkedIn. So start talking to people, because the easiest way to get into a company by far is knowing someone. I know that like sounds a little weird. So I didn't necessarily do this on LinkedIn before, but like going to conferences and networking events, and you get to interact with these people face to face. Like for me, that's almost like, for being a student, I think that's like the saddest part of this. It's like not having that one-on-one personal connection with people that are recruiting, but they're still recruiting. So it's really just, you're having to do a little more of the legwork, but building those connections, because if they don't have something posted today, they could have something posted next week that you would be perfect for. And so if they already have you in mind, and you know, recruiters want to recruit people, and so you're reaching out to them, you know, it benefits both of you. And even if they're not a recruiter, it does help to establish those connections, because they could be beneficial soon, or they could be beneficial later on in your career. So it's really, for me, as a student, that was kind of the biggest takeaway is, you know, getting to know the people around you, like investing time in people, because you can invest time in doing a lot of things, which I did a lot of random things throughout college. But it's really rewarding to invest in people, spending the intentional time, because sending messages on LinkedIn, it doesn't take too long, and it's not like you have, I don't know, it's like an ongoing conversation. It's not necessarily just like a short one and done, because you're trying to establish something further.
Could I maybe just add a couple of things? You made a great point, and honestly, I'm going to repeat you basically. You got to invest in people. One thing that I will tell the students is, you know, when you hit up people on LinkedIn, especially people that you haven't met face to face, you know, just be respectful, be truthful, kind of don't write like a paragraph, because a lot of times LinkedIn people are just kind of using their thumbs to scroll down, because in this day Everything has to be sort of bite-sized because there's so much content. Everybody's competing for your screen time. So just keep those things in the back of your mind when you reach out to people, professionals. Again, brace yourself for no response, brace yourself for a response, but no action. There's all these things because people are busy. Everybody is, really working hard to put money on the table, bread on the table, and there's a lot going on. So just keep that big picture when you approach. I mean, you guys are going to work hard. You guys are going to have your hearts in the right place. So things will work out. You got to back yourself. You're going to a good school. You're going to really have your peer, your support network is extremely critical. But when you approach people that you don't know, it's always better to go with reasonably lower expectations. And that way you're not disappointed. If you met somebody and if you're adding them, it doesn't hurt to remind them where you met them. I mean, it's just sometimes a little bit of jogging one's memory is always helpful. It also makes it a little bit more personable, right? So just keep these things, basically you're going to meet people at a career fair. It's okay to hit up people on LinkedIn now because I think that is slowly becoming the accepted norm, but just do it the right way with the right intent. Just don't, cut, copy, paste the same thing to 100 different people. People are going to see through that. Try to make it personal, and it'll take a few attempts to get this right, but it will happen. So just be patient, be persistent. That doesn't mean you blow up people's phones. So I just want to throw it out there. So hopefully that helps.
So kind of speaking of LinkedIn, this is another question from our audience. What soft skills and attributes are recruiting and hiring agency prioritizing the highest in today's job market? I guess that's more so, I guess, like towards like the energy market.
So you specifically have soft skills. So maybe I'll start again and Nicole jump in. But you need to have, obviously you need to check off some of the boxes in terms of the job requirements. So that's sort of the technical part. But I think you want to really, again, it goes back to your personality. People know you want a job, but then it's about how you approach it and how you are trying to make your point, but are not coming off as too pushy or needy or too desperate. So there's a little bit of a tweaking, if you will, in how you articulate and communicate in one or two sentences, how you're leaving the person an option to say no. I think that's very important. Sometimes the person may not want to respond or may not be able to help for whatever reason. Just recognizing, just put yourself in the other person's shoes when you write that email. Just pause for a minute and just think about how you will sort of process that information if you're the one receiving that email. I mean, I think that's the best bit of advice that I can give you. And that really shows clarity in thought, consideration for others, and a little bit of empathy. And I think those are some things that I think the astute reader will pick up. You want somebody who's competent, but you also want a good human being on your team. So let's not forget that.
I agree, Aravind. I'd say, come across as informed, but flexible all the same. Acknowledge that you have things to learn. No one's expecting a new grad to come in with all the answers to every question. It's you're bringing something else to the table, as I said before, with your enthusiasm, your energy, and the knowledge that you have learned throughout school. But show that, you acknowledge that you're here to learn as well, and you want to join the team and learn from your peers and your colleagues. From a soft skills perspective, I would say there is no one thing that companies or employers are looking for. There is a place for every single personality type. We have a large sales organization. You may think of sales as being, outgoing. There's some really, really great salespeople that are introverts. So we all have different personalities. Don't change yourself, I suppose, is my biggest thing. Be honest, be truthful, be yourself. And you'll find your right fit.
I have a follow-up question about, I remember in the beginning, Nicole, you mentioned something about how it's important to find mentors. I know, Sierra, you talked about how that helped you land a job. I was going to ask you all, and thanks for speaking, Aravind, a little bit about the etiquette of how to reach out, but I was going to ask you all, like, how would you want people to reach out to you? Say that I wanted to reach out to Aravind, say I'm interested in policy and I want a mentor. What do you think would be a good way to do that? Like, what would you want to hear? Would you is email usually better? LinkedIn, you're saying, is more interesting, but like, what are important questions to ask your mentor if you are able to?
That's a tough one, but so, just going by the fact that I've been part of your program and I've seen you've seen my face and you've sort of said this, I'll probably be aware of that. So I think for you, the barrier becomes a little bit lower in terms of approaching me. But if you're doing this with somebody that you don't know, I think you want to be clear about why. I guess even before hitting that send button, you want to really step back and think, okay, this is where I want to go. This is probably where I need some help. And this is sort of the pool of people that I think could help me, but you need to know why they are the people. And once you're convinced, you will know exactly what you want to ask them. So just like you put it, you want to be a little bit direct and say, hey, I'm connecting. This is blah, blah, blah. I may have met you here or there, or I found out about you from somebody. Give that context so the person to know a little bit about me, and it's not just a cold email that 100 other people or a million other people are getting. So add that little bit of personalization, but also convey what you want from me, and then it's up to me how I respond. I usually respond to everything. That's just me, though. Sometimes it's not the answer that you want, but I try to make sure, because I always put myself in the other person's shoes when I email, and I have been a student just like you more than 10 years ago. So I know what it means to get a response and to get some support. So just keep that, but I think how you put it, be direct. Nobody wants to read paragraphs. Nobody wants crazy attachments. So you have a focus. Once you know person A, person B, person C, you need to know what the ask is, and that's on you. And then you can use LinkedIn or email or any medium for that matter. I don't think there's one right way to do this. Emails work, but again, you need to have that email. You need to also recognize that sometimes you send an email that may go to the junk folder. You hit up somebody on LinkedIn, but that person is not really active on LinkedIn. So you're probably thinking the person's ignoring you, but the person doesn't even know that there's a message in the mailbox. So just think about all these possibilities. So what will happen is you will brace yourself for these potential delays and some unfortunate outcomes for you. You will not take it personally. I think that's very important, because after 100 messages or 1,000 emails, you should still be normal. You should still be cool. You should back yourself, and you should really approach it objectively. Don't take anything personally.
I agree. I wish I was as good as you, Aravind. I wish I was responding to every single email in a timely manner, but I'll be honest, I've got a couple of hundred messages sitting in my LinkedIn, and maybe I'll sit down tonight with a glass of wine and go through them all. I don't know. But I think from my perspective, cold calling, so to speak, is really difficult. And so leveraging the relationships. So even if you wanted to reach out to any of the panelists, like people that you've actually had some sort of engagement with, or reaching out to people that you know to say, do you know someone I could reach out to and make an introduction on my behalf, is, from my perspective, probably the best way of starting to develop that network. So even draw it out. I know this person, I'll ask them, do they know someone? Do they know someone? And draw yourself a map. So, the benefit of social media, including LinkedIn, is that we can all connect. One of the problems is, probably like all of you, I'm getting messages from all around the world every single day. So there's just so much to sift through. And that can be a challenge in terms of timely responses. So I agree with Aravind completely. Don't take it personal if you don't get a response. It's not that, someone thinks you don't have value or you're not good enough. It's just the amount of media and messaging that we're all trying to consume is so extensive. So start where you have even the slightest connection.
No, but Nicole, that's a great point. I didn't think about really expounding on this fact, but you're on LinkedIn or any social media platform, you're connected to person A, but you may want to reach person C, but person C is connected to A, right? Or second degree connection. Take advantage of that if especially, and just make a polite request. I mean, again, always remember, at least this is what I remember, not everybody is obligated to respond to you. So if you kind of have that in the back of your mind, you're going to make a more reasonable request and have an even more reasonable expectation of the outcome. So I think that'll really help you tune your own spirit, your inner spirit, So then you'll sort of get better at it. Just be very objective. Don't be so too emotional about these things.
So just like a very brief thing on that. This is kind of, I feel like, where it comes full circle of don't be afraid to reach out to people that have been around here longer than you, because your faculty know a lot more people than you. So in terms of making that connection, usually someone knows someone somewhere that can bridge that gap.
I'm so sorry, I have to jump off here soon. This is such a great discussion to be a part of, but I just have one more little golden nugget piece of advice. You know, I think going back to an earlier question, talking about what can you do now as a student, and tying it back into this question, be careful not to wear yourself thin. Be careful not to water yourself out. If you're reaching out to every single person that might know someone that you know, you're going to be divided. Really make those connections with people who you are close with, people who know you, people who, you know someone who works here, who knows someone who works here, and then work that thread of connection would be my personal advice, because I don't like receiving messages on LinkedIn from people I don't know. I delete them. It's bad, but I do. If they went to App State, maybe I'll reply. But just talking about this tendency, I think, in our society of, because there's so much information, there's so much technology, there's so much conversation that can be had, I think it waters down the conversations that could be stronger if we just stuck with the people that that really know us, that really, you know, are there to try to help us. And you know, building those connections, I think, is very doable as a student. If you are trying to do 20 different projects and go to 15 different meetings at the same time, you're not going to be fully invested in any of them. Try them all out, get the flavors of each, and then stick with the one that makes you the most excited. It doesn't matter if it's a geography club because you're in geography. Stick with what makes you the most excited. Stick with what you feel the most passionate about. Stick with what makes your heart beat fast, and build those connections through projects that you're interested in. Start projects. You don't have to jump on board with someone else's projects, and create projects as your theses, as your, I forget what they call it for undergrad, as your studies. Like, start projects that you're excited about and ask people for help. Ask professors to help you with projects that you're interested in. Ask other students to help you with projects that you're interested in. And if something makes you light up, follow that. And don't try to go to 16 different meetings just so you can put it on your resume. Stick with one organization or two organizations or one or two projects rather than trying to spread yourself thin, would be my personal advice as an introvert who's easily overwhelmed. But really just figure out what lights you up, figure out what makes you excited, listen to your gut, and then throw yourself into that and figure out, you know, everything that you can do in that club or organization or project that can build these soft skills that recruiters and hiring companies are looking for, and build the skills that feel best to you. If you're not a project manager and you're not interested in being a project manager, don't spend your time working on those skills. If you are interested in, you know, art and sustainability, like, go with that, go with your gut, go what feels the most correct to you, the most right to you, and stick with it and give it your all and learn everything that you can from something that makes you feel the most alive. And with that, I have to go to this other meeting that I'm also very excited about. So it was so nice hanging out with all of you. Thank you for putting this together. And please feel free to reach out to me. That being said, about me being a total introvert and easily overwhelmed, like, I'm always happy to help students who have questions. I might not have the connections for you, but I'm always happy to give advice and offer whatever connections I can. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Sierra. I love that ending comment too, by the way. Thank you so much for that. With that being said, we are running low on time. Is there any final comments from the panelists that you guys would like to add in?
Maybe just a closing comment from me is, don't think you have to have all the answers right now. You know, things will come with time. So even if you don't know what you want your first job out of college to be, that's okay too. You know, it'll work itself out and you will get more clarity as you move through. So I think there's been some really great advice shared by the other panelists today. But don't stress yourself if you think I'm just not sure. I was in that situation when I was in university as well. I was studying, I was enjoying my studies, but where I wanted to go, I didn't know, and it's okay. It'll work out for you. Trust me on that. Just do the hard work.
Yeah, I'll second what Nicole said, and I think that's why I wanted folks to know a little bit about my professional background. You know, I started off in telecom. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I'm not an automotive engineer. I'm not an electromechanical, whatever geek who loves to break and make things. I didn't even go to a policy school, and here I am doing policy work for a very large corporation, working with many different business units. So back yourself always. You're going to find the right opportunity. It took me all these years to, I think, identify what I really want to do with my life, but I've been in many roles, and that might change also. So again, to complement what Nicole said, it's okay to change. So you may think you have hit upon the gold mine or sort of your dream job, but it's okay to change, pivot, and as long as your heart's in the right place, and as long as you know why you're doing this and why you want to pursue this, I think that's going to be the decision that you will make for yourself.
Then kind of on theme with that, you know, it's okay not to know, especially straight out of college. So even if you end up doing, I don't know, even if you end up doing something you're not entirely super passionate about, as long as you keep the end goal in mind. And then also staying true to yourself. Out of college, honestly, I had wanted a position like this straight out of college. But then again, like I went to Charleston, lived there for a month. Then I moved to France because I've always wanted to travel, and I lived there for a few months. And so it was a very roundabout way, but it's also like knowing yourself, and you don't have to rush into these things because like this is a long-term thing. And so in school, it's always like constant change based on like what you're doing, the classes you're taking. You're always learning something new. And in your career, like you'll get the training you need. In terms of like the question earlier about like the soft skills to look for, I mean, what kind of qualities do you want in a coworker? Because usually a lot of the technical stuff you can get trained on, but you can't teach someone to be a good person. You can't teach them to like want to do their job. Like you can't teach them like time management skills, and like being passionate about something. Like there's a lot of things for a person. It really like comes within. And so like when you're thinking about stuff like that, it's like, what do you want your coworker to be like? So obviously like a caring person, but also the qualities of like wanting to learn. So all of that's like really important. And so as long as you stay true to yourself, you have time to learn. So if you don't know something today, like you can learn it later. So I feel like school is kind of like this big rush, but even afterwards, like that doesn't mean you stop learning the day you get out of school. So it is a long-term thing. Yeah, it's an exciting journey for sure. I'm excited for all you guys. Even if like your first job isn't perfect, like all my coworkers, no one has the same background. And it's like, it's kind of inspiring. Like some don't have college degrees, but we do the same job. It's really the qualities, you know, that people look for. And if you can have someone to vouch that you have those qualities, it's a big thing. And so that in terms of connections, it's like getting people like that know you and are able to vouch for you, like having those qualities, it's a good thing to have.
Thank you so much. I was going to say, before I let Matthew close us out, I just wanted to thank Matthew and Dee for all of the work you all have done for this amazing summit. And I wanted to thank all of our speakers for being here and everyone who tuned in. We are living in interesting times, but we're really glad that the summit, the mid-year summit could be online and that we could all get these amazing people in a room to talk about the marathon that is our careers in life. So thank you all. And thank you also to Dr. Powell for the work you're doing and bringing more diversity to the table. I was even really happy to see a lot of women in this panel. So it's definitely going to be a great future for this industry. So thank you all, and I'll let Matthew close it out.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I really appreciate you guys joining in and having a conversation today. I guess as a student myself, I've had definitely my doubts and everything, but after having conversations like these, I feel kind of energized and ready to get back out and just keep trying to find my place. So I really appreciate y'all.
Great, thank you guys so much. And everyone look for internships at Volvo Group. Yay.
Yes. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Yeah, come join us and don't hesitate to reach out to me if I can be of any help. Thank you again for having me on the panel.
Thank you guys for coordinating this.
Yeah, thank you for your generosity. And I definitely encourage everyone to try to go to that career cluster. I mean, again, in the pandemic, opportunities like this to do it virtually are a blessing. So yeah, hope everyone has a great day. And thanks again for tuning in and for sharing your nuggets of wisdom.
Thanks, everyone. Stay well, stay safe.
Yep. Bye.
Yes.